Okay, guys, let's get started with this last week. How exciting is that? I am really excited about this. Somehow it just happens that all this other administrative shit that happens at the university all comes together at the same time. There's college committees, they want reports. I don't know, there are staff meetings that are happening. Seriously, I don't know, last week I had like 7 bloody meetings for either the school, the college, or the university. Yeah? And none of it had to do with my core things, which is actually delivering a good module for you guys and doing research. Right? So it's kind of like funny, like there's an awful amount of stuff happening at the background that you guys don't always see. Yeah? I wish I wouldn't see it, but unfortunately I do. Somebody has to do it. And then I'm always the guy who kind of puts the hand up, you know. That's sort of like my problem as well. So I don't know. So here we are. So it's the last week. So this week I won't introduce any new content. Yeah? We are done with the content. There's no new thing that is going to happen. Depending on how it goes today, if you have some more time, I might do a little excursion or so on. But no new content. So today I will focus on feedback for the assignments. Now you guys kind of, you might have seen it, you might have not seen it. This morning I released the grades for the assignment. Remember there was this thing a couple of weeks ago, yeah, that you wanted to go away. I wanted it to go away, but it didn't. So here we are. So the grades have been released. What you see there are letter grades. That's all that matters, right? You might see a total thing. Forget about that. That's really just Blackboard being shitty. Yeah? And actually, Blackboard is being phased out. There's a new VLE coming in next semester in a way. Blackboard really is kind of a little weird. There's a reason why we don't continue it. So forget this total score. Yeah? That's really, if you want to know what it is, it's actually internally a score. Is that kind of, I use a scale that goes from something to something to for different points, but then they are not weighted against each other for the take-home test and for the second take-home test. But the letter grades, they are there, and they will be weighted exactly like as outlined in the syllabus. So really, this is just the background information that I tried to switch off, but I couldn't. Yeah. So really focus just on the letter grades. That is all that matters. But before we get to the assignment, let me remind you, that this online test, the second take-home test, is still happening right now, right? And the deadline, if you haven't done so yet, is tomorrow. Most of you guys have done it, but don't forget about it. I don't know, it would be like a waste of points. I don't know, it still counts for, I don't know how much, for 10% of the overall grade, right? And everybody should be able to nail that one, because it's really just about looking through those texts that you guys had to read. Yeah? Okay, so that's about the take-home test. And the other thing, before I kind of get started with talking about the assignment, on Thursday I want to do a review session. So in order to do that, does this work? Yeah. In order to do that, I don't know, I can talk about lots of different things on Thursday. So I'm asking you, what should I talk about on Thursday? What are the topics that you would like me to review? Yeah. Interesting, huh? It's actually pretty cool. I remember like 2 years ago, I introduced this here at the university. And now so many other modules are using this, which is, I think, really great, especially for large groups. We are a smaller group, so we can do a lot of interaction in a different way. So I think it's always a little awkward when you have 10 people and you take them, okay, take out your phone, instead of asking them. But it's a great way, if you ever are in the situation of teaching larger classes, who knows what you're going to do in life. Embrace it. Elevator summary. What is an elevator summary? I shall Google it. Oh, reach somewhere in 30 seconds. But if you don't know, I actually once did this for the first year module, where I made a little video that condensed all the topic, everything, all slides. Like a 2-minute video. But, you know, there's, I don't know, if you kind of want to watch these kind of things in 2 minutes. Okay, obviously I cannot talk about the specific exam questions, right? But I will talk about, I don't know, the style probably. So maybe I give you some examples that you kind of get a feel for how will this look like, right? Normally I try to not take you off guard. You know, I think that's just not nice, but also like, I don't know, whoops. Anyway, so normally there shouldn't be anything that kind of surprises you, you know. It's pretty transparent. It's all based on the readings. It's all based on the lectures. If you kind of paid attention, if you kind of came to the lectures, or if you watched the videos, you know, if you kind of did the readings, there shouldn't be anything that kind of surprises you. Yeah? So this will stay open if you haven't kind of suggested it. I will look at it after this lecture, and then I will pick certain things out of that. Yeah. And tell you a little more about the exam. Yeah, but I don't know what I expect. How it will all go. Think about the exam questions, it's kind of funny. I have to submit them very early on during the semester. So actually, I can't even remember what the exam questions are. So I don't know them either at the moment. But I shall look them up. Okay, so today I want to use this as a feedback opportunity. You know, again, like in the ideal world, I would love to have this much more. I don't know, it's just a matter of function of student numbers and, I don't know, staff resources that we have available to this, right? So I would like to do this much more. What we're going to do today, I will have like a general group feedback session. So I will talk you through the different assignments and sort of what I expected or what I had hoped for. I will have some examples for you, and also, you know, that you get a feeling for, I don't know, what was good, what was not so good in that regard. But besides of that, there will be an individual feedback session. So if you want to avail of that, it will happen on Thursday after the lecture from 5 to 6 in my office, and on Friday from 11 to 12:30. Essentially what there is, you know, actually I have a long Excel sheet, yeah, with very detailed profiles of each and every single one of you. Yeah. So with very detailed points, yeah, about where you scored, where you dropped points, and so on, right? Because we had like these 3 assignments, and there were like, I don't know, 3 or 4 sub-assignments in a way. So each and every single one of you has like a score sheet on that. For simplicity reason, the way I approach this, you have to approach this somehow, yeah? It's actually a shitty work, you know? You sit there and every 150, where are you guys coming from? Yeah? I don't know, I never see 150. But I had to deal with 150 bloody essays. And you know, I want to do justice to each one of you and be systematic about it. So you see, like for each of those sub-assignments, I just simplified it that, I don't know, you could get up to 10 points. Just, I don't know, that's this weird internal scale. Yeah, where I just say, okay, that's a 7, I have some ideas about what a 7 is, or that's a 10, I have a 10, I have an idea what a 10 is, and so on, right? And these things then are being added up over all the 11 columns where you could score points, and that gives you a score. And that score, again, has nothing to do with percentages or so on. You cannot use it like that. It's really just an internal score that I use to then ultimately produce an A, a B, or a C. Now, that's what I have to produce. It's one of those other genius inventions at UCD, you know, that there's these letter grades. So we have to provide letter grades, but if I have sub-assignments, you know, I cannot have what is an A plus a B or plus a C or something like that. It becomes a little weird. So I have to use an internal score system first to get to that, right? And then produce the letter grades that I have to come up with. So that's what I have here. And if you're interested in that, you know, if you still have questions after this group session today, feel free. Thursday, from after the lecture, basically. Today I have, unfortunately, other meetings. another meeting. Yeah. But on Thursday from 5 to 6, I'm available in my office, D411 in the School of Sociology. But also on Friday, I'm going to be also there in the office. So from 11 till 12:30, I'm going to be there for sure. So if you want to get your individual profile, and we can quickly talk through it, just come by and I talk you through this. Yeah? Okay. So at the end, I had to produce some grades. Overall, I have to say I was happy with the result. This is sort of a distribution where you see what the result is. It clusters around, I don't know, B. I don't know. There are a couple of good, very excellent ones actually. Because when you look a little closer at what these things mean, it's always important to keep in mind what these things mean. So a B is still very good. That's actually the definition of a B. It's very good. An A is excellent. There's like an outstanding component. An A plus is like, mind blowing. Yeah, in a way, it's like really far and above what I don't know, what was expected in a way. So in that regard, I'm very happy with the distribution that we see here. So I have you can look these up at UCD as well, but because I want you to be aware of what do these things mean. What is the criteria that are kind of being applied for an A, for example. Yeah? An A is an excellent, it's a comprehensive, highly structured, focused, and concise response to the assessment task, consistently demonstrating an extensive and detailed knowledge of the subject matter, a highly developed ability to apply this knowledge to the task set, evidence of extensive background reading, clear, fluent, stimulating, and original expression, excellent presentation, spelling, grammar, graphical, with minimal or no presentation errors. Now, just to give you a flavor of what is an A. Yeah? Or even further, you can say, okay, there's a deep systematic engagement with the assessment task, with consistently impressive demonstration of a comprehensive mastery of the subject, reflecting a deep and broad knowledge, critical insight, as well as extensive reading, critical and comprehensive appreciation, relevant literature, and so on and so forth. So that's sort of like what an A is. It's not that I'm making this up. This is a university-wide guideline on grading. What is a B? A B is very good. Yeah. So if you have a B, it's still very good. It's very good. A thorough and well-organized response to the assessment task, demonstrating a broad knowledge of either the subject matter, considerable strength in applying that knowledge to the task, evidence of substantial background reading, clear and fluent expression, quality presentation with few presentation errors. Yeah? That's a B. What is a C? A C is still good. An adequate and competent response to the assessment task, demonstrating adequate but not complete knowledge of the subject matter, omission of some important subject matter, or the appearance of several minor errors, capacity to apply knowledge appropriately to the task, albeit with some errors, evidence of some background reading, clear expression with few areas of confusion, writing of sufficient quality to convey meaning, but some lack of fluency and command of suitable vocabulary, good presentation with some presentation errors, and so on. Then we have D, which is satisfactory and acceptable response to the assessment task with basic grasp of subject matter, but somewhat lacking in focus and structure. Main points covered, but insufficient details. Some effort to apply knowledge to the task, but only a basic capacity or understanding displayed. Little or no evidence of background reading. Several minor errors or one major error. Satisfactory representation with an acceptable level of presentation errors and so on. Then there's E, which is unsatisfactory, which would be failed. Fortunately, nobody failed. So I'm not going to talk about that. So you all passed. So you all had a D or better. Unfortunately, for some students, I had to apply a penalty, but that was sort of known before. There's, depending on whether you were granted an extension request from our school, you either received a 1-week penalty, which resulted in basically the subtraction of 2 letter grades. So if you would have had, let's say, a B, it would have turned into a C+. Or if you kind of submitted 2 weeks late without an extension being granted, it would have been reduced by 4 letter grades. So instead of a B, it would have been a C+, B, B minus, C plus, C, C minus. Yeah? So you would have had a B, but you're getting the grade C minus because of the late penalty. Again, it's just a school-wide policy that we're applying. Okay, so much about the letter grades, what they mean. Yeah? So now, let me just mention, we do have an A+. Yeah? So I don't know if Kira is here. Kira, are you here? She's not here. But nevertheless, congratulations, it's great. It was an outstanding achievement. I think it was really great. So I thought, yeah, that's perfect. Out of 110 points that I internally had to give, I think I gave her 108. So that's quite a lot. So that kind of deserved an A+. But we also had, I think, 9 A's. Yeah? And also congratulations to those guys. Yeah? So I know some of you are here. So again, this is like it's a great achievement. A is like great. You know, it's an excellent piece of work. It's more than expected. It's more than what would have been expected. You sometimes there was a little weakness here and there, but nothing major. Otherwise, you would have not gotten an A. That means you had like a solid and at least very good answers for all of the 3 assignments. Sometimes what happened, is, there are these 11 columns that I have, and sometimes I have a student just not answering one of those columns. What can I do? Sometimes I gave some pity points, to be honest. Yeah. Well, not really. I was like, I don't know. And if I gave pity points, I gave everybody pity points. So I didn't distinguish here. But sometimes, let's say, I don't know. We're coming to this in a second. Support from above for the explanation. Yeah, there's the 4th point, 1st column for the first assignment. Student didn't give an answer there. But somehow the student kind of talked about it a little bit in the explanation of the first one. Yeah. I don't know, in describing the explanation. Then I kind of accepted these kind of things. So in doubt, I always try to find the points. Yeah? Believe me, I always try to find the points for you. But sometimes it was just really a pity to see that some of you guys didn't answer a certain sub-question. So that's like the biggest advice that I can give also for the exam. Just really read the fucking question, and answer the bloody fucking question, because I sit there really like, I don't know, going through the criteria in a way. So I'm not rolling dice there. I kind of apply the question to everybody equally, right? And then it's unfair to those who answered the question properly to give you extra points for going off on a rant on something else, which isn't what was required from you. So that's kind of the big advice. And also answer all questions. I was really happy to see that nobody blew the thing and just answered one assignment, which would have been really bad. But I'm really happy that nobody made that mistake, or that you spotted it in time. Because that would suck. Because that would mean, like, I don't know, suddenly out of 110 points, like 70 are gone. What can I do? What can I do? Of course, I try to then find points as much as I can. And actually, what I also did, I also gave myself an option to kind of give additional points for, I don't know, for extra points if something was exceptionally well written, or if something went far beyond what I had expected in this particular case. So there was an extra column which was mostly positive. In one case, unfortunately, it was negative. So there is something like a plagiarism test. So keep that in mind for assignments. We do spot these kind of things. But, it was just a single case. Okay. So this is sort of like how these things got added up, and then, they were translated into here we are, like I just made my life easier. Probably I complicated things, but it just really made my life easier by giving just up to 10 points for each one of those sub-questions that we have. One thing that also played a role in, maybe I'm sort of, maybe it has to do with me being a foreigner myself. I kind of know that language can sometimes be hard, but I know language is something that can be figured out. That's the least. Well, it is important. Don't forget that. But that's not the thing. I personally give more value to is there the core in it? Is there the argument there in it? Other colleagues kind of give different value to other things, right? But nevertheless, language does matter. Also for me. So does the whole thing look good? Is there sort of a coherent way of presentation in a way? Is there sort of like a decent English? Is it sort of understandable in a way? But I'm not as extreme as other colleagues. They completely brush it aside once the English isn't 100%. I think that's stupid. That's stupid. I've been in that situation myself. My English was shitty, and now I'm correcting your grammar mistakes. Anyway, so English. But also another point that kind of was maybe less important in the exam, because in the exam you're not in that situation. But for the assignment, did you reference correctly? Was there the bibliography? I'm the kind of guy who I actually read the bibliography. I don't finish until I finish the bibliography. And sometimes when I read a journal article, this is the first thing I read. I read the bibliography. It's really important, and to get that right. So learn to do that right. Also in future essays that you write, cite properly. Yeah? Do the referencing correctly. And that also means if you have quotes, put them in quotes. Otherwise, it's plagiarism. Yeah? Put them in quotes. Give the reference and the page number. That's the proper way how we do it. If you have an idea, make the reference to the literature. And some of you actually, I was really excited to see that. Some of you did a really good job in that. You kind of really went into the literature, had a nice bibliography, and I thought, oh, that's actually pretty cool. Yeah, and I thought, yeah, I learned something. Ideally, I would want to read these things and learn something. That's sort of how this would ideally be. So that kind of factored in as well. Yeah. And so quality, style of writing, and also like proper academic style in that. Okay. So now what I have, now I want to walk with you through the 3 different assignments. So let's start with the first assignment that we had. The first assignment was this little thing. In one of the first lectures, we discussed how to make an explanation according to Jon Elster's hypothetical deductive model. I used the example of Broadway shows receiving more standing ovations, explanandum, because ticket prices increased, explanans. Choose one of the puzzles provided by Elster 2007 and come up with 1, your best possible explanation, 2 alternatives, 3, discuss how one could obtain lateral support for your explanation, and 4, provide support from above based on literature. Okay, so first of all, I think Elster has a pretty cool list of puzzles there. It's you read through it and think, what? Yeah. So nevertheless, some of you gravitated to certain puzzles. I don't know how these things happen. Probably you talk with each other. Or maybe there are certain puzzles that you like. It's absolutely fine. It's absolutely fine with me. Some kind of, I could spot, I don't know, this was the only person picking a particular puzzle. But they're all sort of kind of cool. They're all kind of cool when you wonder, okay, I wish I would know the answer for it. But probably Elster also wishes he would have the answer for it. What is the point here? The point is here just to outline a strategy how we could find the answer. It's not about giving the answer. It's about how would we go about it. And how would we be systematic and scientific, analytical about that? That's the key in that exercise. So what did I expect? So in the first one, your best possible explanation. I was looking, first of all, is there a description of the puzzle? Yeah. Sometimes people just started off with an explanation. I thought, what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah. So is there the puzzle being mentioned? Yeah. Is there sort of maybe there's a little description of the puzzle. Is there a proper explanation? Does the explanation make sense? And does it explain the puzzle? So there was just a sanity check. Like every explanation, I might not agree with your possible explanation, but it's still like, does it make sense? Yeah. I might not think it's the best possible explanation, but that's not the point here. What matters is that you think this is the best possible explanation. There are lots of other explanations out there, but can you present your best possible explanation? And can you present it in such a way that first of all, there's a proper description of how you get from the one to the other. You have an explanandum and you have an explanans. And how do you get from the one to the other? And that's sort of where sometimes, unfortunately, some of you dropped the ball. You kind of said, it's, poor people don't emigrate because they don't have money. Yeah? Which is by itself not wrong, but there's something missing. Why would not having money not go to emigrating? What's the connection here? Right? And then I'm looking for, do you say something like, well, because they cannot buy a plane ticket. Because that's what you need to emigrate. You need to get over there. Or they cannot afford then to get a new apartment or live somewhere. Right? Or because living expenses might be more expensive in some other countries. In a way. And they need to sustain themselves. They need to buy food. So it's sort of like this. It might sound like, oh, this is sort of splitting hairs, but that's what analytical sociology is about. It's really kind of getting into the mechanism, how you get from the one to the other. Yeah? That was sort of like the key thing. So I have one example here, and this is sort of a little test, where I'm going to ask you about which score you would give that answer. So again, you might see some of the stuff that is from you. I don't know, maybe not. Don't take this personal and whatever. Why I anonymized it, so it's really just randomly. I don't even know who wrote which answer anymore. So there was a student who tried to answer the puzzle: why are poor people less likely to emigrate? So the answer was: poor people emigrate less due to migration restrictions and strict border crossing rules. Yeah? Okay. Poor people don't migrate because of border crossing rules. My first thing is poor people, border crossing rules. Why should poor people have different border crossing rules? Doesn't make sense? I don't know. Yeah? Poor people are less likely to have access to appropriate documentation. Well, I hope not. I hope that, I don't know, nowadays everybody should get a passport. If there would have been another statement in there, which is what I recently discovered, that apparently you have to pay 81 euros to get your passport renewed at the German embassy, yeah, which is where I was, and luckily I just happened to have 81 euros, because those buggers only take cash. God knows why. That could have been an argument here. You know, I might have still, I don't know, questioned it. Is it really, is that the problem? Yeah, why, I don't know. You don't migrate because you don't have 81 euros. But, you know, we could argue about that, but then the mechanism would have been clear. But here, I don't really see the connection between poor people and not having access to appropriate documentation. They are less likely to be approved a visa. I hope not. Yeah? Although, there's another thing coming into play, especially long-term visas. I think the thing what the student wanted to get to, so I see certain thinking in there, right? But it's not fully developed in a way. So one story I can tell you is, you know, I lived in Canada for a while, and there I actually had to get a visa. Yeah? And actually there it really works if you have a PhD. Yeah? It helps and it's easier to get a visa. There's actually a restriction in Quebec. I don't know. If you are highly qualified or something like that, you qualify for a certain visa. While if you don't have that, you don't. There's nothing in there written about my bank account that I would qualify for the visa if I have more money or less money. I guess what the student wants to say is that poor people are less educated, and less educated are less likely to, I don't know, have difficulties getting the visa because they don't meet the requirements of, I don't know, high-skilled labor in certain countries, green cards and so on. That's a fair enough argument, but you see there's a step in between. There's a step in between that I don't see. Due to strict border rules, the opportunities are very limited, depending on what country they are citizens of. Again, my concern about this is that I hope that every citizen of Ireland is treated equally. I hope that, there shouldn't be a difference in that regard according to your bank account. It is much harder to gain access to working permit, and it's a long and complicated process when it comes to gaining residency status. It might be true, it might not be true, but I'm missing the link again. Like, how can we end up, what is the argument? It's almost less important, like, do I agree with that? There's always things you can discuss. That's the whole point of social science, that we can always discuss about things. The thing is, you need to make your argument in a way. How you get from the one to the other. That's the key piece. That's what I wanted to see. It's not, of course, there was like a sanity check, and I don't know. I'm saying this here right now that I didn't believe in certain things, but that's not what lost the points. What lost the points was not having that trail, not having outlined the mechanism how we get from the one to the other. It also varies depending on desired destination. If they can't immigrate on legal terms, it is even harder to immigrate illegally. Hence, they don't immigrate at all because of the legal issues they may face on arrival. I just didn't understand it, to be honest. But there were still certain things in there, as I mentioned. The student had thought about certain things, right? I don't know, about certain connections. Yeah, there's the legal aspect, there's this education, which is underlying that in some ways. So believe it or not, but the student still got 6 out of 10 points for this. Yeah. So I really tried to find the points. But maybe now you see why it wasn't a 10. Yeah? The key was this mechanism being lined out. Let me show you another example. This is now an example, also like one puzzle that a couple of you chose. Why in Shakespeare's play does Hamlet delay taking revenge until the last act? I think there was a much clearer answer. So the student is saying, in looking for the answer to this puzzle, why there are many, my best possible explanation of this puzzle would be down to the fact Hamlet is a man of conscience and humanity. That's the argument. Yeah? That's the explanation. And now the explanation is being described. Considering the facts, this is a young prince, tragically lost his father. King Hamlet was poisoned by is poisoned by his uncle Claudius. Claudius then marries Hamlet's mother, Queen Gertrude, and takes over the kingdom, which in turn makes it very difficult for Hamlet to trust those closest to him. So now the student elaborates on Hamlet being this creature of conscience and humanity. Yeah? And then this is a well-established situation that we can observe in certain circumstances in real life as human beings. So now actually there's even another step being made that, okay, this explanation is not just in this particular case, and there's also something higher up. This explanation is not completely bonkers because we also see it elsewhere, right? That this is a well-established situation that we can observe in certain circumstances in real life. As human beings, we can understand the grief and trauma of losing a loved one and the effect of the betrayal family and close friends can have on us. Hamlet is a deeply emotional, obsessive, fragile-minded man who is extremely indecisive, without anyone to confide in or morally support. The student now explains, now he makes that link between how that, or he or she makes that link about how being a creature of conscience and humanity, how that kind of leads to not killing, delaying the revenge killing to the very end. So many of you talked about the puzzle of Kitty Genovese. I don't know, did you come across that in another lecture? Or is it just a cool puzzle? Yeah? Which other lecture?
Both the introduction to sociology last year and also applied psychology.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, it's a great example. Yeah. We know the story, this person got killed, there were 32 people standing around, nobody called the police. Now, why did that happen? Now that's a puzzle. And a lot of you remembered, hang on, there was something like the bystander effect, which was great. But a lot of people just used that as the explanation. They said they didn't kill it because of the bystander, nobody called the police because of the bystander effect. And that was about it. Yeah? And then I was left with that. There was no description of what is this thing, and more importantly, the bystander effect is a more general thing. Actually, the bystander effect would be perfect, as I outlined here, for support from above. This is like a more general thing. It's a theory that applies in different contexts. That kind of would lend to support to the explanation that in this particular case, nobody called the police because everybody thought somebody else would do it. You see, there are different levels in a way. Like the bystander effect is support from above, actually. So it would be perfect there. But you still would have to describe, in this situation, I wanted to read that nobody called the police because, everybody was thinking that somebody else would call the police. The bystander effect is much more general than that. It's not just about the police or anything like that. It's really like a general phenomena that has been now established, that has been shown in different experiments, in different settings, which kind of lends support for this bigger theory that includes this bystander effect, which kind of would also help to make the explanation in this particular case. But the important thing is that this will be on different levels. So I'm flashing it out there because a couple of people kind of mix that up a little bit. Yeah, I still kind of, as I said, if you kind of mentioned the bystander effect, clearly you kind of knew that there's like a theoretical support for that. So I still gave you points for it on the question number 4 that we had in that regard. But you still sort of mix it up a little bit. So there was like, you dropped a little bit. You didn't explain, there was no proper explanation to begin with. So I wanted to read the explanation. Okay, so let's go to the next one. So at least 2 alternative explanations. What was I looking for there? Are there really 2 alternative explanations? Believe it or not, sometimes people only give me 1. But then what can I do? Do they make sense? Do they pass the sanity check? The minimal test, that they are plausible? Can they explain the puzzle? And then is there a proper description of the explanations in such a way that the mechanisms are clear in how the explanandum follows from the explanans for each of the alternatives? Basically just mirrors what we had for the first one. So is that also clear? Is there the mechanism outlined? How you would get from the one to the other? Again, it's not about you thinking that this is a bad explanation or so on. It's really just, okay, this is an alternative and this is how this alternative could look like. Yeah? And how you would get from the one to the other. Going back to Hamlet, there's a little more text about this. An alternative explanation to this puzzle, why Hamlet delays taking revenge, could be the reliability of the source he hears the shocking truth from, the source of information. So there's an argument. Maybe Hamlet is thinking the information that I have is not correct. And maybe he wants to double check that information. Maybe because of that he doesn't kill his uncle. The source of information comes from the ghost of Hamlet's father, although in questionable shape. Hamlet may find it difficult to believe the shocking revelations. To jump to a conclusion straight away, blaming such a horrific crime on his uncle and immediately seeking revenge would be completely irrational without proof the source and information is true. Comparing the ghost to the form of the devil, Hamlet may be unsure whether or not he is being tricked. So there's sort of like an explanation here that, okay, maybe it's about lack of information. That's the argument here. Yeah? It's also outlined why this could be an explanation. There's another explanation and so on, but I will come back to that. What is the explanation here? Another explanation could be that the character is the complete opposite to my above theory, and the honorable prince we thought had a crippling conscience is actually plotting the perfect plan of revenge from the beginning without hesitation. Okay, we might come back to that when we talk about the next one, which is lateral support. So discuss how one could obtain lateral support for your explanation. Unfortunately, this is where a lot of you drop the ball. So what is lateral support? Can anybody tell me what lateral support is? Come on, Aiden.
It's not the theoretical, okay, and it's not the support from practical. It's other alternative that are you've knocked out, so that they weren't actually valid. So you've tried to suggest other possible alternatives,
yeah,
and then you've rationalised that they are not also.
Yeah. So key thing is it's not about the explanation, it's about the alternative explanation. Yeah? So you have your alternative explanations, and now we focus just on the alternative explanation for the moment. Yeah? And we can now think about, okay, what else would have to be true if those alternative explanations are true? And then we can go and think, okay, is there a situation where we would then have to observe something else, if that would be the thing? Can we refute the alternative explanation somehow? So some of you guys actually used the quote from Elsa, which is great. An explanation receives lateral support if we can think of and then refute alternative explanations that also pass the minimal test. What is the minimal test? Minimal test is really the sanity check. Is this plausible? Yeah? I have like here now the example that we had in the lecture. We have like, I don't know, Jon Elsa talking about increased ticket prices leading to more standing ovations. That's his best possible explanations. Then he has like an alternative explanation, which is that it's because they're different audience right now in the standing ovation. It's more like people from Jersey, they come over to New York to those Broadway shows, and they're just easy to impress. And because of that, there are more people standing up. Yeah? So this is his alternative explanation. But then he says, if that would be true, if this is a matter of audiences, what else would have to be true then? Yeah? And then he comes up, this is sort of where you are creative. This is where Elsa is very creative. Because then he says, well, if it is about the audience, then if the show would be somewhere else, let's say the show would happen somewhere in Kansas, yeah? Well, Kansas is a big city still, but let's say somewhere in the countryside where you have a different audience, then there should be different people standing up. Or there should be actually also more people standing up. Or another thing that he says, can we think of these scenarios where if it is about the audience from the countryside going into to Manhattan, to the city, if that is what's driving standing ovations, then can we think of situations where people from the countryside could not have gone over there? Right? Because then, if that is actually the explanation for it, then there would be fewer people standing. So you see how these are sort of like alternative implications of our alternative explanation. Yeah? And then if we don't find support for these things, that means, okay, well, the other thing, I don't know, seems less plausible. Yeah? That means that then we can kind of knock that out in a way. Because we showed in a different context that it's actually not that much about the audience. So that's the idea. So here the idea really was kind of think about ways, okay, if you have an alternative explanation, come up with these lower two things of what else would have to be true and what are the situations where you then could potentially reject that. Not saying that this is what has to be. Again, this sort of requires a bit of abstract thinking, yeah? Because then you just think like, okay, if this would have been... So you try to find these kind of specific cases where then something is different in a way, where then you would expect a different result if your alternative explanation would be true. And then if you don't find that, then you can knock it out, or I don't know. Or the other argument he makes is a second alternative explanation is about improved quality, that the shows just got better. That's a second alternative explanation. And he says, well, it is about improved quality. Then that means that, reviews should have gotten better over the years as well. Independent reviews. Can we find that, right? Ratings of those Broadway shows over the years. We could then go back into the archives of, let's say, I don't know, some magazines where Broadway shows are being reviewed, and we could actually check if those reviews actually got better, to get an indicator for the objective quality of those shows and how that changed over the years. So we would have to observe that if it is about the improved quality. Or he also says that those shows, if their quality is better, then they should run longer. Again, this is something we could then go and kind of see if we can find support for that. And if we don't find support for these kind of two things, well, then our explanation that it's about improved quality is starting to become shaky. So that's sort of how you need to think. You need to think about your best possible explanation, your alternatives, and then you need to think about what else would have to be true if your alternative is the thing that is driving it. And then kind of try to think about other contexts, what this would then imply, where we then kind of can look and find data for knocking out these kind of things. So that's the idea. So that was lateral support. This not easy, but nevertheless, a good chunk of you got it, which was great. Where I sit down there and let's where you kind of gave me a really good explanation for something, what I was looking for. I don't know. It's now coming back to our Hamlet. Remember we had this explanation. It's about Hamlet being a human being that is conscious and doesn't want to kill somebody, and the alternative was that he wanted to get better information, right? That was his first alternative. Because, he received this information from this ghost. And who trusts a ghost nowadays? Seriously, I wouldn't trust a ghost. So then the student says, lateral support for these explanations would consider each of these explanations separately as true, but also look at what else is true around them for it to be our best possible explanation. So what else would have to be true? And then the student says, focusing on the ghost of Hamlet's father, if the ghost really is appearing in questionable shape, we would question whether or not Hamlet is subject to irrational hallucinations, mental health issues, or possible post-traumatic stress disorder after the loss of his father. So basically the argument is that, Hamlet is just bonkers. The guy is just mentally ill. That would have to be true. Who he loved and all that. So if this was to be true, that would mean the character of Claudius would have to be completely innocent, blah, 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 and so on. We can knock out this explanation as we later find out that Claudius is entirely villainous, blah, blah, blah. So there's actually now an argument being made. Of course, we can discuss it, but the student argues that, okay, if it is about Hamlet just being mentally ill and misperceiving the world, then actually, the fact that then Claudius would be actually a nice guy, and Hamlet misperceives that. But actually, it's stated clearly, that Claudius is a bad guy in a way. So it's always thinking about the alternatives that you have. I have another explanation here that I want to bring forward. So there's a student who chose the puzzle why are ice cream stalls often located besides each other in the middle of the beach. It's a fascinating puzzle. And the argument is that customers would be better off, and the argument is that all of the vendors want to be located in a spot that is most advantageous for reaching maximum amount of customers, the middle. If they were all to be evenly spread out at the beach, there would always be an opportunity for one vendor to move closer to the center, getting an upper hand on the competitors, gaining access to more customers. So that's the best possible explanation. Then the alternative explanations, I'm not going into detail here, but the student says an alternative explanation could be vendors want to be closer to their competition so they can better investigate what their competitors are doing. That's a reasonable explanation. Or customers are more willing to go to an ice cream stall if there are other options nearby from the chosen from. So these are the alternative explanations that the student presents. Now the lateral support kicks in. And this was a good lateral support. So here the student says, I would provide lateral support for my hypothesis by refuting the two and any alternative hypothesis that I have come up with. To disprove the first alternative explanation I have provided, and that was vendors want to be closer to their competition so they can better investigate what their competitors are doing, I would investigate whether businesses nearby each other are more influenced by their competitors when they are directly next to one another versus equidistance on a stretch of land. For example, on a 1,000 meter stretch of beach, if I could test a scenario where on some beaches we have many ice cream stalls directly beside one another, and on others the ice cream stalls are spread out, I would test whether the beach where the stalls are side by side has a higher tendency for the stalls to copy one another's products. Prices or sales techniques compared to the beaches where the stalls are more spread out. And this is great. This is something you can go out and actually test, right? So if it would be about, I don't know, copying each other, right, then you should actually see that in their product and also in the price that they have. They copy each other in these scenarios where they're closer to each other compared to beaches where they are further away. Another explanation, we're running out of time, so I don't want to talk too much about it, but you see where this is going. Like how I would have loved to see this being developed. That is lateral support. Let me go on to the last one, provide support from above, based on the literature. I was looking for, was there an understanding of what support from above is? Unfortunately, again, a couple of you dropped the ball here. It was not clear to me that you understood what support from above is. Was there engagement with the literature? Was there a more general theoretical argument? Was the theory clearly relevant for the explanation? Did the presented theory support the main explanation? And was there proper citation and reference? So these are the kind of things that I was looking for in this explanation. So I have here an example. A student chose the puzzle. Why are poor people less likely to immigrate? The explanation, I'm just summarizing this right now, was immigrating is associated with costs, plane ticket, and so on, buying, selling furniture, establishing oneself, and so on. This is what I got for lateral support. According to Elster, making a decision is an event, or in the case of this proposed puzzle, making a decision to not do something can be classified as a non-event. So making a decision to not immigrate, according to Elster, is a non-event, which should be explained either by a fact, a consequence, intended or actual, or a prior event. I try to make sense of it. Yeah. Unfortunately, this is only 2 out of 10 points. Yeah. It's only 2 out of 10 points because there was just, why did I still give 2 points? Because the student, I don't know, talked about Elster and kind of, talked about events and non-events and so on, but what was missing? There was no connection to the explanation. There was no connection to the puzzle. There was no engagement with any literature, except this Elster reference there, which, I don't know, doesn't really provide a theory that could explain what is going on. And then besides, you cannot explain something with a consequence. That's just mixing things up. Although if you're a modern quantum physicist, you might say that. But nowadays, we think about cause and effect. The consequence cannot be before. Another example that I have here, and I will come back to that on Thursday. Maybe we use the time to talk more about that, because you get a feeling for what I'm looking for in the exam as well. So maybe this is like a good idea to continue on Thursday. So coming back to the student who kind of had the puzzle about the ice cream stores. The ice cream stores are often located besides each other, and the argument of the student was that all the vendors want to be located in a spot that is most advantageous for reaching maximum amount of customers, the middle. That's the argument of the student. Yeah? Okay, so you see how this is at the level of these ice cream stores at the beach. This is the level we're talking about. Now the support from above, this is what I get. Yeah? And it's a 10 out of 10. It's really good. So the student says, I provide support from above by explaining Hoddeling's model of spatial competition. So it's this guy called Hoddeling. Yeah? In his paper, Stability in Competition, 1929, Hoddeling describes how competing businesses will want to be in the central point such that they have maximum access to customers. It can be applied to the ice cream stall puzzle in the following way. You see, this is a general theory that is now being applied to this case of the ice cream stalls. And now the student actually makes that transition. So it's not just that the student presents this theory, references that theory, but also kind of makes the connection to how does that actually matter in our case? How does that actually make the students support the student's best possible explanation? And then suppose we have 2 ice cream vendors on a beach of 100 meter length. At first they decide to set it up and so on. For instance, stall A, set up blah, 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 and so on. So basically there's now this theory being applied to this particular setting of the ice cream stalls. So, well, this takes much longer than I would have thought. But so I guess we will continue that on Thursday. I hope this is useful for you to, I don't know, that you also get an understanding of how I think when I kind of grade these kind of things. Keep it in your diary on Thursday after the lecture. we have like the individual feedback section where I can give you detailed things, but also on Friday. Yeah, question?
Is it just first come, first served?
Yeah. I have no other plans on Friday, but don't maybe, yeah. So hopefully everybody can be served. Okay.
So the online quiz 2, is that due today or tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. I have a medical certificate for the question I received.
Yeah.
Is it possible to